Thanks for tuning in to another knitting and crochet tutorial video. Today I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the yarn swift, the yarn ball winder, and what to do when you don't have those two items. I always use my yarn swift, which is this thing, when I have yarn that's sold and comes this way. This is, if you haven't heard of Romney Ridge Farm, I will put a link in the comment section below in the video description. Kelly has some beautiful yarns raised. She raises the sheep herself. She's in Maine. It's local grown, sustainable. She supports Maine shepherds and shepherding. I'm not getting anything by promoting her yarn. I met her at Rhinebeck. I've been using her yarns for a long time, and I love it when the wool still has that slight scent of lanolin. It's not over processed. She hand dyes everything herself. She told me in big pots out back. This is not the subject of the video though, but I do recommend her yarn if you'd like to see what handcrafted from the farm to your hand wool is like, especially if you don't have the opportunity to visit sheep and wool festivals in your area like Rhinebeck or the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival or the New Jersey Sheep and Wool Festival. So I recommend Romney Ridge. Anyway, when yarn's sold like this, you open it up and put it on your yarn swift, attach it to the yarn ball winder, and wind away, and you have a terrific a terrific skein of yarn. Sometimes, however, you buy commercial yarn and it comes packaged like this, and this is a beautiful soft squishy yarn. It's an acrylic wool blend, machine washable, and it's slightly slick. So what ends up happening is it's loosely wound in this beautiful fluffy skein of yarn, and when you pull the center out, this is what I got pulling out, trying to get the end of the yarn. I wouldn't try to unwind it and put it on the swift or even attach it to the yarn ball winder and start turning the handle. But if I start to knit with this, inevitably I'll have knots or twists and it'll just slow down my work. So this is kind of a speed tip to keep things flowing when you actually get down to making fabric. What I do is I take something like this handy kitchen tool. Did you know that your wooden spoons are also yarn tools? You could use a ruler, you could use a decent sized pen or pencil. I like a wooden spoon. It's smooth and it's long enough to suit the purpose that I have in mind for it. What I do is I take the end of the yarn, and I'm careful not to make any knots in this as I leave it down. And what you're going to do is let the end of the yarn go towards the bottom of the spoon and leave a decent size amount, because as you start your hand winding process, it will pull up a little bit into the yarn, the center of the ball. So what we do is we just wrap. You just wrap. And as I'm wrapping, I'm using my left hand. I'm right-handed. I'm using my left hand. I'm just turning the spoon. See the end of the spoon turn? I do that as I go. So I'll do a few and turn, do a few and turn. And when it starts to come up like that, oftentimes I'll just undo it and really try and focus on keeping the yarn winding right around the original place I started. You don't want to be doing this. You want your yarn to build up over the center. And I use my index finger to hold on to the ball as it goes, and see how it's preventing the yarn from going over this way to do the same thing at the bottom, and then you have to unwind it. So use your index finger and you'll get the hang of it eventually. So I'll go for a while. Now it's a nice big poof and I'll turn a little bit more and just keep going like this all the way around. And I'm not going to do the whole ball in this video. because while it's fast, you don't need to sit there and watch me wind a ball of yarn. So that's how you do it. And once it's all wound up, and you could do this with ends of yarn, or rather small scraps of yarn. You could also do this as a way to make your own multicolored skein of yarn to work with. Let's say you have 5 different odds and ends of baby colored yarn from different projects that you see. It's already nodding. If I'd been knitting, it would have been a problem. Let's say you're doing a baby blanket, or you want to use up scraps of different colors and make a scarf or a stash busting blanket. You can wind balls of yarn like this. You just keep going. When you get to the end of your small leftover bit of scrap yarn, you join the 2 pieces together, and perhaps I'll show you another video on how to join 2 pieces of yarn with a fairly smooth join that doesn't have a knot. You have to be gentle with it, but we'll get into that in that video. You just can make these great center pull balls, and it looks like it's done on the yarn ball winder, but it's just a wooden spoon from your kitchen. So when this is done and I pull it off, I will finish by wrapping this a little bit tighter, tucking the end under, pulling it a little bit, so if that was my end cut or the end of the ball, and then your center pull is right there, and this is what you'd use to work with. It just comes out nice and easy. So it prevents this mess. Now, I don't get this often. Usually when I buy yarn like this, I will use the yarn like this for my project, but in this particular instance, this yarn is just so smooth and soft to the hand, and it's wound a little bit loosely on the skein, and I find this method to be much more helpful. The second reason that I like it is I take a lot of my knitting with me on the go, throw it in my purse, hop on the train, head into New York City, and these are much more compact, the size of the finished piece, and because they're a little bit tighter, depending on how tight you're winding it, you don't want to go too tight. That will affect your knitted piece, your fabric, when you're done, because yarn that is wound tightly, the same thing goes with the Swift. You don't want too much tension, because yarn that is wound tightly, when you actually do the knitting, that yarn has been pulled tight, and then your work, when it's the knitting work is done, the yarn relaxes. So it will adjust your gauge, and your fabric will be affected if you've wound your yarn really, really tight and it's been sitting in that position before you actually start knitting. Anyway, it's very portable. The balls tend not to come apart the way this one easily would. This is the outside, not the center pull. This is the end. See how the end it's just ready to come right off. And see my 3 strands. That would not be pretty. So this is just a little tip. Give a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Have an awesome day. God bless you. Knit and crochet happy.